Hi. You guys awake? How many of you went to Nation Ball? I can see you a little bit. Yeah? Emerson, huh? So good. I was leaving, and a girl who's watching my kids right now, she was like, yeah, I was at Nation Ball last night, and so I got to hear, I'm like, there's probably going to be less people in chapel. So be it. Anyway, I really am excited to talk with you this morning, and I really am sharing about the community standards, our community standards. And it's been something I've really wanted to talk about more and more as a whole community. So we're not the whole community, but I know you guys touch several lives. And I'm hoping that this morning we make more sense, maybe even give you more of a shared vision of why do we have the community standards that we do? And how are they actually good for you? How are they good for me? How are they good for us? And so I really have wanted to just, let's have a family conversation, you know? And so this is really kind of what I think it is. This is a family conversation. And because it's something that we ourselves are committed to, or we find ourselves struggling with, and so it's something that's very real to our daily life. And so I want to talk specifically about the community standards. And one of the really difficult things as I think about talking this morning is how different you all are. And I think about your different stories. I think about your different pasts, your different religious tradition even. I think about your different experiences, your pain, your successes. And all of that difference can really make coming to the conversation of community standards really challenging. Because some of you are like, this is a no-brainer. This is the easiest thing for me. I feel safe here. This is no effort. And some of you are, you know, hey, the community standards are great, but I think I'm smart enough to manage them on my own, so I'm going to decide how to manage them. And that even might be the majority of us. And then I think there's people who are like, they're lame, I'm not following them, you know? And so we kind of are across the map on that. And so I want to just recognize how different we are, and I'm trying to bring us all to the same table. And so work with me as I do that. But so I want to really just kind of say, what are the community standards? So you know them, the ones that you're really probably most familiar with. We'll push a button, or you guys just, there you go. Oh, let me go back. Are really the things that we call you from. So I'm really going to use these two ideas as what we call you from, and to abstain from, away from, and what we call you to. And so you'll see behind me, there's alcohol, drugs, tobacco, inappropriate sexual activity outside of marriage, inappropriate use of technology, gambling, which also always causes controversy, and immodest attire, which, it's hot. And immodest attire starts to reveal itself about right now. So, so we have these things that we're calling you from, and there are reasons for it. And truthfully, I don't know that we have honestly done a really good job of explaining to you why. I think it's just, hey, this is what Biola does. Welcome to the community. And I have had a heart for several years to give you more, to be able to share with you a little bit of our purpose and all that. But I want to also say what we call you to, and I think this is lesser known, and I think for some of us, I think these could be more difficult because they're more hidden, they're in our hearts. So living with integrity, practicing confession and forgiveness, attempting to live reconciled to each other in our rooming situations, in the person we think who lives down the hall is scandalous, in all of those ideas that we have about people, that instead we're being reconciled, we're not driving wedges between each other, to accept responsibility for your actions and words, and to submit to biblical instruction. And so I think there's a lot we're called from, but we're called to a lot. And I think that we generally, when we think of the community standards, a lot of times it's contract. And I'm like, oh, that feels so binding and very unlife-giving. And I feel like that is not the heart behind them. So I want to share with you a little bit. And my hope is, I think even as Todd said, Scripture does actually plead with us. Paul pleads with us, particularly, walk in a way that is honoring to God. And I think we spend really our lives as Christians really trying to live with the Spirit to discern and have wisdom to move toward what is that for me in particular. And there are times in our life that they are defined for us, and there are times in our life where we're choosing them ourselves. And this is actually one of the times in your life that we are saying there's a couple things we want to do, and here's why. And you do all the other things. And so there is something we're calling you to in the community standards. So why? I'm really going to say there's 3 main reasons why we have the community standards. And I'm hoping to some regard that they feel compelling to you, because I think they are actually compelling. So the first is really to develop character. We want to develop something in you. We want to move you from a place of maybe immaturity or self-focus to a place where you can be growing. We want you to love each other, and we recognize that is hard in our culture. We don't do a lot of loving really well necessarily in the biblical idea of love. And then really just to preserve a safe and healthy community. So I'm going to spend most of my time on character and loving each other. And first, just character. So we're trying to develop character. And I think if you can recognize character doesn't just happen. It's not through osmosis all of a sudden we find the strength to say no to things that tempt us, or we have the ability to hold our tongue all of a sudden just because we hope we stop saying mean things or lashing out in anger. This takes a discipline, it takes denial, it takes time. And really, a lot of times we kind of underestimate how difficult it is. I was looking online, and I found this actually several months ago, but it's this little graphic of, there's an institute that has positive psychology, and they study what are the major areas of character that they find are universal. They're global. These things are things that people value across cultures. And so this is a little picture of it. But I think when we think about a person of character, we respect them. We want to be like them. But we don't always know what it is they're holding and restraining. We don't know what it is that they've been disciplined in. We don't know the pain that they've had that has caused them to come to this place. And so we have to just even take it at face value that character takes a certain amount of work. And so the community standards are really a lot about the work of you building character, the work of you being able to say no. And when you look at our culture, the things that in college you should be doing, really I think mainly of our sexuality, I think of alcohol, I think of drugs. Those are main things that I think of that, again, and I've said before that our culture really has extremely low expectations for you, that you really can't say no to these things. And our real goal isn't, for instance, that you just avoid alcohol, which is, I think, probably one of the hardest. I think because it touches really everyone, because for the most part, you turn 21 here. For the most part, a lot of us have really varying backgrounds on what alcohol is, but also because it's incredibly culturally expected. And so I think that's one that I think almost everyone, and I would say from the people we think ought to struggle with it to the people we think don't struggle with it in terms of, should I have a drink? Should I break the community standard? I think a lot of people struggle with this one. And you know if that is true of you. And for some of you, it might not be true of you today, but it might be in a year or in 2 years. And so there really is something we aren't necessarily caring as much, hey, alcohol, avoid it, it's the big bad thing. It isn't that. Now, does it corrupt? Does it destroy? Yes, and we all know that to be true. But the truth is, what we are trying to build in you is not the ability to fear alcohol or not know how to manage it. What we're trying to build in you is the ability to say no to yourself, to build character strength, to be able to say, in the face of your friends who think it's really dumb that you won't get a drink, to be like, you know what, I made a commitment and actually that matters to me. That process is going to develop something in you that ultimately will make you a faithful spouse, a person who, when your kids are driving you crazy because you get zero time that's about you, that you stay, you don't leave. And it really is the ability to not run from your own pain in your life, but the ability to say, you know what, I need to look at this. It's time to look at it, and I'm scared, but I move toward it because we need people who are aware of themselves and fighting for truth in their lives. And so we are wanting to create something new. So character strength, we think these community standards, because they're actually, for some of you, very difficult to say no to, you may actually be building stronger muscles than a person who is not having a difficulty saying no to it. And we think that matters, and God knows what exactly is next for you in your life. The other thing is that character brings freedom. I think about we want freedoms in our life. We want to be able to do what we want to do. I was thinking of if I really wanted to continue eating and never stopping because I loved, say, ice cream, which I actually really, really do, and have found myself recently really wanting it all the time. But if I continued to do that, the freedom I have that freedom to eat the ice cream. But eventually, my freedom to eat ice cream may mean that maybe I become so overweight, for instance, that I lose my freedom to exercise, to play with my kids. Maybe I don't want to show up at social situations because I'm embarrassed. Or maybe I have health issues because of that. And that's just an example of a freedom we take can mean the loss of other freedoms in our life. I think of students, for instance, that I've worked with who are smoking, whether it's pot or whether it's cigarettes, they lose a certain amount of freedom because before they go back to their dorm room or something, they're having to spray so that no one smells it, or they're having to go off campus a lot and they're missing a lot of social interaction. And there is this sense of these freedom that we want loses other freedoms. And we are wanting you to value the freedom of a clean heart, not hiding something, not having a secret about what you're doing in your life. We're wanting you to come in being able to be unencumbered. And the truth is sometimes that's not possible. And that's where the things we're calling you to of forgiveness, reconciliation, confession. If we are really working in these things together, we are doing our best to encourage each other, support each other, to abstain from certain things. And when we make mistakes, we're doing our best to be reconciled to each other, to the community. That is why the community standards can't just be what you can't do. They've got to be what you can do and what brings you together. And so together we think that actually gives you a certain amount of freedom that is really, really, really important. So there's more I could say about character, but I think the other thing I want to say is for love of each other. We want the community standards for love of each other. I have a friend who really loves beer, and several years ago, we were having a conversation about the role of alcohol in our lives, and he's a missionary now, and but he said, I would give up alcohol if someone had a problem with it. And I remember thinking when he said that to me, like, A, I respect that, and two, isn't that a little dramatic? Like, can't you just do what you want to do and have the freedoms that you want to have? And I realize I still think that sometimes. Like, deal with it, people, grow up. I'm going to make my own choices. And the reality is that is very American, to do our own thing, and everyone else works out their own thing, and I work out my relationship with God, and he convicts me. It's just about me. You do your thing. But that is not biblical. We are accountable to each other. It really, really matters what you do. And for a number of reasons, I think in Scripture we find this a lot. There are things we don't necessarily understand, but we're still asked to submit to. And I think one of these things is, how do we impact each other? There's a quote from Bonhoeffer. I'm going to put it up because it's long and, he doesn't write like a three-year-old. So I will put it up so you can read along with me. But the individual must realize that his hours of aloneness react upon the community. In his solitude, he can sunder and besmirch the fellowship, or he can strengthen and hallow it. Every act of self-control of the Christian is also a service of fellowship. There is no sin in thought, word, or deed, no matter how personal or secret, that does not inflict injury upon the whole fellowship. An element of sickness gets into the body, perhaps nobody knows where it comes from or in what member it's lodged. So it could be you, it could be me, but the body is infected. This is a proper metaphor for the Christian community. We are members of a body, not only when we choose to be, but in our whole existence. Every member serves the whole body, either to its health or to its destruction. This is no mere theory, it's a spiritual reality. And I have found that to be more and more true. And I wonder if our autonomy really from each other is what makes our communities sometimes shallow. We don't weep together. We don't have real joy together. We don't necessarily carry each other's burdens in the way that we're called to. We don't forgive each other well. We talk about each other. There is this something that there's something holy in community. There's something holy in our Biola community because we have this spirit. And so we are hoping that we are trying to learn. I love you because I don't know your story. So I hold what is my right because it might be best for you. It might be best for me. The truth is, these community standards actually might protect us from ourselves. I think they do sometimes. I think they protect us from each other. And they're really hard to do sometimes. But again, if there's a higher calling, there's a greater purpose in what it is our community is about. How do we love each other? I think really one of the ways we do it is we tell our stories. We tell our stories of failure. We tell our stories of where we're at, even if we're not healed or okay. We have compassion. We start to learn to have compassion for people. We tell our stories of success. I think people need to know, for you, if you aren't tempted at all by, say, alcohol, or you really have a really good system with what you're doing in your dating relationships sexually, if you are like, I do this well, share your story, because we need to know. And we need to know people who are sharing, this amount of guilt that I've carried has weighed me down for way too long. I need help. And so we really want you to be sharing with each other and growing together. And I want to just say quickly about, lastly, preserving the safety of the community is when you look at universities where alcohol and drugs and rampant sexuality is just prevalent, our communities aren't safe. We find a lot of predators. We find a lot of people who have been violated. We find just a real lack of the ability to come and share, this is my heart, my vulnerability. And we want that for you because we think it is going to grow you. And we think that that is more healthy. But the truth is we need your help. A lot of times I've worked with students and as they're leaving the university, because maybe I'm dismissing them from the university after we've been with them for a long time working through something in particular, and they aren't willing to really be a part and submitted to this community, they say, don't take this community. It means so much to me. And I've often thought, I wonder if they realize that if everyone did what they're doing toward the community that they love would cease to exist. It wouldn't be there anymore. And so I think there is even a call of, we need you to realize you can't just do what you want and want Biola to stay the way it is. You have to keep continuing to move it forward, encouraging each other, and really moving together. And so my hope for you is really that we learn to take the community standards seriously. I encourage you, talk to each other about what's difficult for you. What do you disagree with? What do you need to think more about? It is your life. It is your integrity. I could beg with you and plead with you to be taking things seriously, but ultimately it's up to you. You're an adult, and we hope that you are saying, you know what? Maybe I do need to think more about my character and how do I become the person when I'm 80 that I want to be, and how do I not, it's not going to just happen. Share your story, encourage each other. And then I think one of the things, and I just want to read this last quote. So it's by Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And it is probably the single most book that I think has kicked my rear in my life because I felt so convicted. So here's the quote. It says, confess your sins to one another and pray for each other that you might be healed. It says, he who is alone with his sin is utterly alone. It may be that Christians, despite their worship, despite chapel, despite living together, they are still lonely. The final breakthrough to fellowship does not occur because though they have fellowship with one another as believers and as devout people, they don't have fellowship as undevout or as sinners. The pious fellowship permits no one to be a sinner. So everyone must conceal his sin from himself and from the fellowship. We dare not be sinners. Many Christians are unthinkably horrified when a real sinner is suddenly discovered among the righteous. So we remain alone with our sin, living in lies and hypocrisy. The fact is, we are sinners. And so there is a sense where I want us as a community to not hide. And that means we take accountability. We are responsible for actions and words. But I don't want us to hide. I don't want us to be alone in our sin. And you know what that is, and I know what mine is. And it would be good if we start moving toward each other in compassion. And so the last thing I would want us to do is believe people can change. Believe you can change. Be different, because God is a redeeming God. So I want to have the band come up, and I just want to give you a minute to just think. And really what I want you to do, I'm going to put the community standards back up. What I want you to do is just think through, where are you specifically at with the community standards? Have you thought them through? Are they easy? Are they hard? Are you struggling to abstain? Are you struggling with pride because this is easy for you and looking down on someone in your friend group or something who is not? Are you being truthful and honest? I want you to just think, where am I? And then ask God, is there anything you want me to do differently? And so I'll give you a minute just to think about that, and then I'm going to bring up two people to pray over you, and then we'll close our time. I asked Lisa Ingram, who's the Associate Dean of Spiritual Development, and then Patrick Say, who's the Director of Res Life. I asked them to come and just pray over you, specifically in what you're called to and what you're called from. And just that we would take movement as a community. So I'm going to have them pray over you, and I just want you to, in your own heart, receive these words as a gift that the Spirit might be praying over you.
Pray with me. Almighty and everlasting Father, you have brought us in safety to this new day. It's a new day. God, you make us new. We're your new creations. And the truth is, we take shortcuts. It's the bottom line, God, we take shortcuts. And so we need your help with that. There's those in this community, including myself, shortcuts are easy, God. And you've called us to the easy yoke. And so, God, would you lead us toward Christ? Would you open us to be preserved by your mighty power, that we might not fall into sin, nor be overcome by adversity. But God, in all that we do, in all of who we are, direct us to the fulfilling of your purposes through Christ, God, through the King of Kings.
And Lord, you know that some of us struggle with these things more than others. And so maybe it's not the standards that we all struggle with, but feelings of pride or even judgment. And so, Lord, for those of us whom these responses are most prevalent, where feelings of judgment and pride have kept us from being able to walk with others who are struggling, where this has been a barrier to our ability to engage in community, we ask your forgiveness. We ask for the ears to hear the stories of those who are hurting. And Lord, regardless of where we stand with these community standards, Lord, you are calling all of us into life together with this community. You call us into living with integrity. You call us to practice confession and forgiveness, to live in reconciled relationships, to accept responsibility for our words and actions, to submit to biblical instruction. Lord, in all these things, you desire that we grow in character, to love each other in deep and sacrificial ways, the way you first loved us. And so, Lord, we open our hearts to you in this, and we ask that you would help us to walk worthy of this calling.
I want you to just stand together. We're going to close our time. And what I want you to do is, while we're worshiping, I want you to take a little bit of time to look around the room and realize the person I may not know is impacting me for good or for bad. And I am impacting other people too. And so I encourage you, as we worship, to really just continue the conversation with the Spirit, with God, to say, what do you want for me? What do you want for me in this community? And I think, just as a final thing, and you said it this morning, which I loved, his mercies are new every single morning.
We hope you enjoyed this message. Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Learn more at biola.edu.